Our second speaker will be Darren Gill, Manual Handling Advisor and Registered Nurse for Cwmtaf Morgannwg University Health Board. Darren has worked in many settings, including South Wales Federated Housing Association, Social Services and the Independent Living, Patient Care and Safety Working with the Improving Quality team, and held positions including Training and Development Nurse and Key Trainer. In 2021, he was the third person to experience the honour of receiving the Maggie Williams Award for Outstanding Services to Moving and Handling from the National Back Exchange.
My name is Darren Gill, Manual Handling Advisor for Cwmtaf Morgannwg, as Deborah so eloquently said earlier, University Hospital. I'm an RGN. I've been a qualified nurse now for 26 years. And for most of that, I've been teaching manual handling. And for the last 6 years, I've been a manual handling advisor. I'd like to start by thanking everybody for joining us for this webinar and showing your interest really in our bariatric patients, a group of patients, I think you'll agree, who have been neglected for the most part, who are difficult to manage. So it's been an interest of mine for a little while to sort of look at improving care. And what I'm going to present to you now, even though restricted to 10 minutes, which is always difficult for me, is just some of the lessons I've learned, some of the things I've found out on my journey. There'll be no sort of scientific studies and research and some of the marvelous authors in the field. You can find that stuff yourself. This is more lived experience through a professional focus, looking at a specific group of wonderful people. So without further ado, let's get on with it. So managing plus-size patients, planning for a seamless transfer home. It's really important to build a relationship with your patients, and these ones in particular, they have a lot of social anxieties, and you need to get that trust in order to move anything forward. So get to know your patient. How are they? How is their family? What are their pets' names? What are their comorbidities? How do these affect their movement and how they deal with everyday life? And, you know, let them know you're in a team together for their benefit. That is important. They need to realize that you both are on the same team, because sometimes there's a bit of distrust, there's previous experience that's at play here. So first we have to get them on side. We are a team. Risk assessment is really important because we've had to be quite inventive, and I can give you many examples of that. So don't always accept the parameters within which some devices are used. But if we do move away from that, you have to take responsibility for that in a considered, well-documented and risk-assessed approach. And review these things as you move forward. Trial runs are essential, of course, and get to know your local areas. So I'm based in a training centre, and I let all our staff in our hospitals know they can call in anytime. They don't have to just come and see us for training. With any queries to work through any problems. Some examples, so for instance, an operation removing a pannus from a patient. What would have been 2 members of staff trying to support quite a heavy load for 3 to 4 hours as the surgeon's removing the pannus. You know, a colleague managed to achieve this by using a passive hoist. Some adaptation to the stretcher bar on that hoist in order to grip the pannus. The cover for a C-arm in radiography actually worked well to cover the mast of the hoist for us to use it in theatres. But as the surgeon separated the pannus, we could raise the hoist, therefore sort of mechanizing this process. There's situations where we've had bariatric patients with respiratory issues who need to be sat up whilst having procedures carried out. Their legs might not fit in the stirrups. They may be too big for your operating table. So we would use a bariatric bed, 2 hoists and leg supports. And in this instance, there's a company in Powys called Manga who have got a camel, a raising aid from the floor, lifting and raising aid, if you like. And the top cushion of that actually sits the patient up. So we use the top cushion of the camel itself on top of our bariatric bed or our operating table then, if you like, in order to keep that patient in the sat-up position whilst they underwent their procedure. all risk assessed, all trialed, and reviewed after, and perhaps improved for the next patient. So sometimes we have to think outside the box, particularly where budgets are an issue, and where we sort of into new ground, if you like. Okay, so managing expectations. What are the patient goals? How realistic are they? Timeframes is important. You know, it's all about developing and nurturing this relationship and the trust. So when we're looking at goals, can they be broken down into component parts? Think of making a cup of tea, obviously, is quite a common one. What do we start with? Getting the cup, you know, that sort of thing. So think of all these tasks that we want our patients to do, break them down as much as you can so they're achievable. And then what you find is you can accelerate as time goes by. You get the small goals first, and then you can increase those goals. MDT is super important, involve everyone. I don't mind being the bad guy as long as it gets everybody talking, asking the awkward questions, because at the end of the day, if people are talking about a problem, they're thinking about solutions, regardless of who've brought it to them. OTs, physios, social workers, district nurses, all part of that multidisciplinary team, all incredibly valuable. And it's important we don't see being bariatric or the patient being bariatric as a manual handling problem. It's a multidisciplinary team problem. We all need to have input into this, from psychologists to surgeons, nutritionists, and we need to bring all of these people in. It is a true multidisciplinary approach. I've mentioned there, do they have the skills? Are they trained? And contracts. And contracts is really important, because I, for one, don't have control over some of the contracts that are put in place. And when some of our senior managers negotiate these contracts, sometimes they miss out some key things. So if we put in there that we need staff who can use specific equipment or train to a specific level, then we need to put that in that contract. So only companies who can provide it bid for it. Because what happens is, after the fact, if we find out that those staff that we've employed via a contract from an agency haven't got the skills we need them to have, then who does that training fall on? Well, it falls on us, doesn't it? So let's get it right in the first place, and only look at or only allow companies who can supply the people we need with the training we need. So there's some work to be done there. Communication, always, we'll come back to communication, but don't get bogged down in the divide between social care and hospital care. We need to work together, and in fact, there's a lot of integrated projects out there involving allied health professionals that have had massive impacts on discharging and how long the patient is in hospital and how smoothly that goes. Yeah, so I'll keep that for another time, because obviously I may run on here. Considerations for discharge. Well, more than the patient becoming fit and well for discharge, is the home ready to receive the patient? Is the equipment available? Is it functional and safe? Early preparation is definitely key. You know, there's examples whereby patients have been with us for a considerable amount of time, and we don't think about them getting home until a long way into their stay. And I can think of some examples from the past where we've actually done a home visit only to find a tree growing in this gentleman's kitchen because he'd been in hospital for so long. So how do you sort of navigate these things? So yeah, let's not wait. And of course, with our bariatric patients, sometimes they're stuck in their homes in smaller rooms on larger beds, and if that equipment was to break down, it's almost impossible. Then we have to involve the ambulance service to try and support us, maybe, because we need to get that person off that surface in order to replace it or fix it. So if somebody is in hospital or is going for appointments, or these arrangements are being made, a little bit of coordination, and we can get in there and service or replace the bed or mattress or do whatever we need to do. Okay. Funding. This is a bit of a bugbear of mine. So key to managing patient expectations. There's nothing worse than a successful trial. Only when you go then to actually get to purchase that product or that piece of equipment, there's no funding available. So work out your funding streams. Are we looking at local authorities? Are we looking at health? Are we looking at a combined approach via CHC, or, you know, these sorts of things? Some patients can afford to pay for things for themselves. Most can't. So knowing which direction we go in with the funding stream, keeping the people who control those purse strings informed about progress and what our intentions are, again, is key. And that's the last thing we want, is a patient losing faith in the system that they pretty much have already lost faith in. Sometimes we are the last ones who can sort of regenerate that. So that's important to take into account the patient and their feelings and what they've experienced, and we owe it to them to make sure. I can give you lots of examples of this, and one where I learned a valuable lesson is there was a system in place to access community seating. It had to go through many professional reviews and a committee. We needed input from district nurses, occupational therapists, myself. The whole process from beginning to end took about 12 months. There wasn't nothing available so far as community goes and community seating that we could have put this bariatric patient in. They were basically stuck living in their bed. And a change of position is so beneficial for lots of aspects of your general living, from your blood pressure to your digestive system, not to mention the social aspects of that and the dignity of it. So it was important for me to find a way of getting this patient out. So what we were looking at doing is using a high dependency chair, one that was meant for hospitals, but actually using it in the community. But because we were sort of thinking out the box again, and there's a greater cost to this, we had to go through a process. It took 12 months, and we were eventually at a point where the chair was being delivered on the Thursday, and my patient passed away on the Monday. So that wait for that piece of kit is not justified. We need to look at these systems. We need to own these systems, and we don't want the tail wagging the dog. And of course, we realize there's budgets that we have to work with, but that shouldn't cloud our thinking. You know, we need to put these people front and center. Okay, so overcoming these challenges, draw on your experience, speak to people, speak to colleagues, use the national forums, the National Back Exchange. I have many colleagues in England, Scotland. We bounce ideas off, we phone each other. Don't be precious about these things. Share your knowledge, because at the end of the day, it's for the benefit of our patients. So single-handed care I've mentioned there as well, but that's got to be supported by accurate assessments and an equipment stream. So, you know, it's these sorts of things. We need to look at safety all the time. Can hospital care mimic social care? Well, the principles are the same, whether you're using a boom lifting hoist or a mast lifting hoist, whether it's in the community or the hospital. The principles of use are still the same. There's better access to equipment now, so no longer are we looking at massive structural changes to install ceiling track hoists. They can be, there's pillars they put in the corner of each room, so the actual forces are going down through the ground, not up through the ceiling, so we can use them more readily than we could before. And the prices are coming down, and you know, you do need ceiling track hoisting even before you have a conversation about single-handed care. So there's these options, and of course, when you do get the ceiling track in, there's lots of things we can use there, accompany with it, to help move the patient from bed sheets / slings. There's a few companies that make those as well, of course. So yeah, overcoming funding challenges can be a little difficult, but not impossible. What I've found is sometimes you don't just go to see these patients once. I've got the beauty, if you like, of straddling both arenas, both acute care in our hospitals, and then I can follow the patient through to home and work with many of the allied health professionals. But one thing I do find myself pondering, because sometimes it may be a few months before I need to make a decision or some suggestions or investigate some problems, and you're thinking, well, how wide was the room? How high were the ceilings? All really important. So get all these measurements in place. And if you can't produce it digitally, then do a drawing yourself. Try and do it to scale or jot in the measurements so you can come then and refer to it. I remember we were looking at one lady in one room, and she had a piano in there, you know, and it took a lot of persuading to get her to move this piano. But I'll come back to that in a second. So access to the property, floor level patio doors, always the best solution. We should always be thinking about getting these patients downstairs, because sometimes they do get marooned in an upstairs bedroom. So if there's room on the ground floor with these, then that should be our starting point. And sometimes we need to work with families as well, because it may be a spouse who needs our support, and the husband or wife are not willing for us to change the makeup of the house, and they have to realize that this is a team effort and they might need to make compromises as much as we do. And the important thing as well is there are a lot of companies out there who will help us with assessments, looking at rooms and homes and equipment that needs to be installed. So don't forget to sort of link up with colleagues in 1 or 5 companies, whichever gets the job done. Equipment, bariatric beds, of course, they now come apart or can be tilted on their side to get into properties, so we're no longer restricted with those things. There are some companies that have these bed sheet slings. There are few. I won't mention them now, but some are a little bit better than others. Some work in different ways, so they're a variation on a theme. Get to know them all. They've all got good and bad points. But in order to sort of turn our patients 90 degrees, which is essential for parts of basic care, we can get the beds, the mattresses, and even ceiling track hoist to help us achieve that. We shouldn't be throwing person power at it. So preserving function, promoting independence are very important, and just simple handling aids. We underestimate their use, and their cost is a lot less than some of the bigger aids we look at. So just put in bed ladders to the foot and the head of the bed so the bariatric patient can use them and pull on them to adjust their position can make all the difference. Panna slings to sort of make it easier for the person assisting with hygiene needs are a great help. One-way slide sheets, you could, even if you liaise with the companies, get them made to specific dimensions for you to sort of make sure that that bariatric patient doesn't slip off the edge of the bed when they're trying to get in there. Carer safety, of course, is paramount, because the problem with the people we are dealing with is they always put their patients before their own health, and we need to support them in that and get them to realize that we can't keep doing this. We have to find safe ways of doing things. It's not a race to retirement. We want a healthy retirement too. So these sorts of things, of course. Maintaining safe mobilization ultimately improves quality of life. I've got bariatric patients who are living in a bungalow, for instance, and they've only ever seen one room of that bungalow. So we need to get them out. We need to get them around their homes, help them actually participating in their care and in life in general. So even when bedbound, small exercises can be undertaken. So movement of arms and legs, touching opposite sides of the bed, lowering the back of the bed slightly and just getting them to bring themselves forward, particularly with a bed ladder. Any movement at all helps, and that'll grow. You're planting seeds. Body morphology is important, of course, because we do get patients who are apple-shaped, and if we sit them up too much, that causes compression of their organs. It's very uncomfortable, let alone trying to eat. So we don't need to sort of bring the bed up like this. We can bring the bed up a little bit and then use the tilt function on the bed to achieve those positions if we want, Enough area on the mattress is important. We do see incidents where people, when we're looking after bariatric patients, we haven't considered management of the pannus. And that's a key point of all of this, particularly making sure you've got enough surface on your beds. So when you turn the patient on the side, that pannus is supported. So the extendable side beds are essential for a bariatric patient. We can start these thought processes in home, and in the hospital, and we can continue them then into home by liaising with the community teams. Communication is really important. We need to stop working in silos. Integrated services are accelerating. Ourselves, we've got an integrated OT program, so our OTs in our hospitals can take our patients to their specific area within the hospital where they have community products, community hoists, community things, and they can actually look at testing this single-handed care prior to discharge, so you get this seamless, safe transfer. Saves the local authorities lots and lots of money, so they do tend to buy in, providing you can get the message to the right people. Okay, so we're coming towards the end now. Unfortunately, I would love to stay and speak with you for much longer. But looking at end of life as well. So of course, heart failure, fluid retention are very common in this client group. They become rigid, find it difficult to move, the body swells, joints are stiff, respiratory difficulty. So let's not wait until we get to this stage to start thinking about PEEPs. Okay, because there's a lot of sort of a groundswell now from our people with disabilities who are perhaps housed in 5th, 6th floors, maybe higher, in sort of these flats, these residential flats. And how do they get out if the lifts don't work, you know? So let's not wait until PEEPs become a legal requirement. Let's start thinking of them now. And one of the big assets I found is go to your local fire station, speak to the station commander. Some of them already have bariatric crews, but they are only much better to be proactive. So let's involve those fire crews. I've had 2 fire engines blocking off a terrace street. We've sort of shored up the stairs with sort of these acros, these big sort of steel poles, in order to get this bariatric patient down the stairs prior to them losing their mobility. So they're in a front room next to the front door. So if there is any health emergency or, God forbid, a fire or anything like that, it's easy to evacuate them. So we need to start thinking about that immediately. How do we get these people out safely in a health emergency or a fire emergency? So again, don't be afraid to work across specialties. We're all public servants. We've all got a common goal, or at least we should have. So better to be proactive. There we go. So lastly then, to conclude, before I leave you, proactive approach is essential when managing plus-size patients into hospital and to home. Communication involving the MDT, all allied health professionals across acute to community is key. Knock on doors, you know, don't be afraid to do these things. Somebody's got to speak up for this client group. Early patient discussions on admission can encourage a patient to meet their goals, promote safe and early mobilization. Understanding the funding route will prevent delayed transfer of care when accessing the right equipment to improve the patient's and carers' quality of life. Positive outcomes will stick with you for a long time, and that's really important. You can have 10 really bad experiences and one awesome one, and the one awesome one makes it all worth it. So thank you guys for listening to me, and I look forward to seeing your questions later. Cheers.